Everyone, I'm Janet McHenry, and this is Writing Wise. And today we are going to be talking about how to create an effective book one sheet for the concept of your book. So let's first talk about a definition here. Exactly what is a one sheet? I know that term is tossed around quite a bit. You might hear that there are media one sheets, and those are particularly for you to pitch yourself as a speaker for media or podcasts. And then there are speaker one sheets, and those are essentially to pitch yourself as a speaker, a presenter about particular topics for which you are prepared. But a one sheet for a book concept is a one-page graphic representation of this book idea that you have in mind. The purpose behind it is, I think, at least a couple fold here. First of all, it helps me to actually develop the whole concept for the book. Like, what is this book? You might get an idea or a concept, or you feel nudged in a particular direction to write about something really important to you. This will actually help you kind of zone in on those areas of audience and exactly being able to explain what the book will do and what it is. But then it will also is very handy, and usually this is how we get the nudge to be able to prepare these to facilitate discussion with an editor, an agent, or a coach, someone usually that you're meeting with one-on-one, maybe for some type of a personal meeting in regard to your book idea. I was going to show you several that I have created over the years. And these are one sheets that I've sometimes just created for myself. And maybe they've never gone beyond myself because it helps me kind of establish the idea. The most important part of the book idea that I have to give my agent is a proposal, and she never wants to share. She won't share the one sheets with anyone that she is going to pitch that proposal to, other kinds of acquisitions editors and so forth. But so for these some of these projects, it's just I needed to know what this could look like. And so for some of these, and I'm hoping you will appreciate and respect the fact that some of these are just concepts at this point. These are ideas for books that I've had and aren't necessarily in print yet. So I'm just going to show you these one by one. This is called Unpacking Prayer, and it just can give you an idea of, what they can look like, how they're structured. You can see that I'll have a graphic of some type, and sometimes I'll create an actual book cover on Canva. And then I'll have a headshot of myself, and notice that they were balanced in diagonal kinds of ways. But some of the print on here relates to the hook for the book, exactly what could be back cover copy for the book, as well as a summary of what the book is. And we even state things like it's a Bible study, or it's a Christian living book, it's a devotional book, of so many days, things like that. This one, I also listed series potential because I thought that this book would lend itself to an actual series of books that I could have with a publisher. And then I usually have some bio and contact information as well toward the bottom. Some of you are familiar with my book, Looking Up. This is the one sheet that I created to kind of pitch this project to editors. It's now a book. It was released in November by Our Daily Bread. And so I created a little cover for the book. Like I tried to think of, what might this look like? What, that I saw it as a happy, encouraging piece. And so then next to that, you'll see what the hook for the book is. Again, I have my headshot, and then I have a summary that describes particularly what the book is, and then along with some contact information at the bottom. I had thought of a book project that could be a devotional book for children written from a grandmother's point of view. And so this is called Not a School, 30 Devotions from Grandma About Jesus. I thought, lots of grandparents aren't nearby. They'd like to be able to share Jesus with their grandchildren. So on this one, here's kind of the pitch for the book. And then again, a little bit about my background and some particular features that I would offer in this project. Another unpublished project of mine is something called Centered. I've kind of morphed this one way or another a couple different times over the last 4 or 5 years. So then I use graphics here that kind of could represent who the audience for the book would be, to give the idea for what is the book. So there's no actual cover here, but I have something about me, the author, and my co-author would be my daughter. And then I have a short kind of a hook and explanation of what the book is off to the side. Another one that I prepared, again, this is not in print. So I created a potential cover for that. Loved, honored, respected. And then I have kind of the tagline for this and I'm going to talk about taglines here in a little bit. The hook for the book, exactly what the book is, and I bulleted what the book is, and then some information about the manuscript and a little bulleted bio info in my contact there. As some of you are familiar with Praying Personalities, this looks very different than what the cover ended up being. And the cover is actually right behind me over here on this little table. But this is originally, I tried to think of like praying personalities, if there are 4 different kinds of praying personalities. So I thought of the idea on the cover of 4 different ways one could pray. And so I have the hook over here, a little bit about some features, particularly some features from that I could offer the book, some unique pieces of it there, another little visual there, and my contact info. Another one I could show you. I have a whole bunch of these, obviously. So again, this is another project that hasn't landed, and perhaps this might encourage you that someone who has published a whole bunch of books has had a lot of rejection as well. One leads to another. So I created a sample cover on this one sheet. I have the hook for the book, a hook and summary for the book. I explain who the audience is, and I feel like that's really important to be able to convey to an acquisition that are like, who would read this? I mean, that's bottom line. That's really important. And then a little bit of info from me and a photo. When I'm grabbing artwork like headshots and things, I try to color coordinate that with the theme of the book. I think that's essential. And so, and that one that there was kind of a blue look to that headshot and that picture there. But here's kind of a gray look because I chose a gray look for this particular book idea. This is called Impossible Prayers, 40 Days of Praying God's Promises, a devotional. So the hook and the summary are here. Some information about marketing strategies that I could use to help promote this book, and a little bio about me down at the bottom. Again, I want you to see how I don't have this headshot up next to the art up here. You want to kind of have a sense of balance. So you don't want gray space against gray space. We call like in the print or newspaper world or printing, you wouldn't have one headline in a newspaper against another headline. You want to balance that kind of feature on a page. And then another one, and this is a project that is being pitched right now. So there, I have the title up here. I have some graphics that kind of represent what the book might be about, a little bit of summary here, audience, and then some info for me. I'm starting to put QR codes now for some of these one sheets that I'm creating. And because I feel like they can just go there and see my website real quickly and figure out who I am. So we'll go back to our PowerPoint next. So those are just some ideas to give you a sense of what could this be. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, you probably noticed that there are some key elements on a one sheet. You do want to choose something that's going to best graphically represent the idea. I use Canva, and on that website, if you go to flyer on Canva, an 8.5 by 11 flyer, and you can go to the templates feature there. You can find all kinds of different things. And these are templates that can be used for craft fairs, or they can, be used for, fly fishing. I mean, all kinds of things. But you can always sub in your own photos. You can sub in your own graphics. But if you get kind of an idea in your head about what exactly you want to have on the one sheet, and then you can find a template there that's going to work best for your particular project. Um, so there will be some kind of graphic element in terms of how it's laid out. And when I'm talking about graphic element, I'm talking about just these little pictures here. This was all from Canva. The idea that there was a larger photo and then these smaller ones here. I liked that idea because there were several elements I wanted to represent there. So you're looking for that graphic, that template that's going to work best for you. But also you have in mind maybe some of your own visuals. If you want to create a potential cover for that, make sure it's really kind of sharp looking. And then, in color scheme, that's going to sync with the template color scheme. Although even with your templates, you can change colors. You can change, you can highlight, go to those different sections. And if they're more blue in nature as these are here, I could have changed this to a different color. Not this, because this is a photo up here. But you can change all those kinds of different elements, but just by clicking on them and then seeing how you can move things, you can move the elements, you can change the color, you can change font and all that. So you're going to have a overall graphic design to the piece. You're going to have your own visuals that you're bringing into it, including your headshot, maybe some other sorts of images that kind of would represent the audience for your book, or the concept behind it. And then you're going to have those essential kind of text pieces. So what exactly would be involved with those graphics, and what might we want to think about as we're kind of putting this all together? You want to have some kind of a branded color scheme. Overall, the covers for most of my Christian Living book kind of fall into the blues, sort of purples, the cool kind of colors as a whole. So when I'm preparing one sheets, they often are going to fall into that sort of branded sort of look. Some are really sticklers about always only using their brand colors, but I look at the template and I think what is going to best represent this kind of project. And it's just kind of I can't help you more than it's kind of just a sense. It's a hunch when you kind of look at something and you can kind of visualize how it would best represent what you would like to do. Think about the layout, whether the layout is going to be, if you're going to have enough space for all of the print that you want. And I highly suggest that you keep that very succinct, because when you are in a meeting with an editor or an agent, they're not going to even read the whole thing. They're going to listen to you as you explain in a very short amount of time, like maybe even 1 minute or less, about what your book concept is. And they're just going to look at it. And so it facilitates discussion with someone. So you want to keep a lot of those text pieces short, but you still want to have enough room to explain a little bit about what it is, because it may be that editor or agent would want to take that back with them. So think about, the color scheme, what the layout's going to work in terms of what kind of copy you have and other images you want to use. I would highly suggest that you only use 2 different fonts. If you have many more different kinds of fonts, it's not going to look coherent. And then I used to work for a daily newspaper, and I did lots of layout, and we had 2 different fonts that we used. And I think you'll see that on design work that's done well. There isn't a multiplicity of all these different kind of crazy fonts. And you also want to make those fonts really easy to read, because it's a quick glance. And I recognize, like, I'm one of these. I looked at the font recently. I thought, yeah, that's kind of hard to read. So we're staying away from kind of fancy scripts, or, just scripts are just, you want to be able to quickly convey what the title is and what the concept is. If you're using any kind of graphics, you want strong images, things that are going to represent audience or the concept itself. If you're going to use your headshot there, along with your bio, make sure that the colors of whatever you're wearing, sync with the overall design of the one sheet itself. Again, keep your text simplified. Instead of having a bio written out in a paragraph, I'm now using just very quick bullet points of some of the most important kind of career aspects that qualify me, that can speak to and qualify me as the writer for this particular book. And then you want that balanced look. As I said before, if you have a visual, if you have a graphic image up here, instead of putting another one right next to it, put it lower down on the page, at least so that they're not completely together. So it'll create that sense of balance throughout the one sheet. The process that I use for this, I always go to Canva. I go to Canva. I highly recommend that if you're serious about your writing, that you invest in Canva Pro. If you pay for it a year at a time, it's $120. I use Canva daily. I create at least 3 images in Canva every single day. And that's not an exaggeration. You can go to my pages and see that. There is something that I'm doing there every single day. And so it is definitely worthwhile. You get many more choices of things like templates, many more choices of things like fonts, many more choices of things like photos, especially the photos. That, to me, that was critical and made me want to invest in Canva Pro after I'd been using it for about a year and trying to bring in my own photos because I couldn't find one that worked. And then the quality of mine was not going to be good enough for that kind of a graphic representation. Then when you go to Canva, it'll ask you what you want to do, and you can put just the word flyer, and it will take you right to that 8.5 by 11 sort of template. You can choose a blank and then work from a blank, or then you can scroll through all the various different kinds of template options that there are. You can specify, if you want to you can put book in there. Maybe you want some like book little graphics or something like that. It can kind of minimize your choices there. But I just like to look through the various ones. I don't care if a flyer is for real estate. I can make it for my book just as easily. Then the next thing that you're going to do, we're going to just start playing with this particular template that we've chosen. I'm going to plug in, if I've created a cover for my book, I'm going to find a spot to put that. And then so I upload the image that I've done, and then I can shift that image right onto that one sheet that I'm creating. Other kinds of visuals that you can use again. Your headshot. People like to kind of see who you are. If that editor is going to take this back, maybe she would pass that around to another editor to take a look at. And I think particularly if you're, meeting with an agent, it's really helpful to have your headshot on there because then he can remember, oh yeah, I remember that gal. Yeah, she was super funny, or she was super fun, or other qualities. And then you have other kinds of images you can bring in. You have to be careful about those that you're just choosing directly off the internet to import there. Some of those we have to pay for. And so you want to make sure that those are available. Anything, again, on Canva itself, any kinds of graphics, and you can have all sorts of things. So, for some of these PowerPoints I use Canva to create these PowerPoints, and I can find these little images like these little books here. They're on the PowerPoint. I can find those under elements. I think the term is elements that I'm looking at. And then I can just put the word book in there, or books, and then all these different fun little elements can be added in. I would write, your text elements kind of ahead of time to think about that, and then, bring that copy in there, and you can add. There's a feature called Add Text, and so you add that text. It's a text box, and then you can copy paste your language into there. I would, overall on the one sheet, I'm using the same number font. This is probably like at least 14 or 16% to make it, or 16 points. So to make it easy for that person to quickly read, to quickly scan. So I wouldn't, if you have a really long hook and you've got a shorter space, I wouldn't make it like this 8-point text to make it all fit in there. I would edit down my text so that it's more simply read. If you're hearing me on that, don't try to make the everything sort of fit in there by shrinking or enlarging text. Just keep your text succinct, get to the point quickly about what your book is and what your summary is, your bio and all those elements. It just make it very readable, because sometimes that person may give it a 20-second scan. I'm not exaggerating there. A 20-second scan. I've heard of things like this. So add in those key text elements next. And then I would add in some contact information. I would stick a QR code. You could put your website address there, but I would, it's just so much simpler for someone, to pull out their phone and then just go directly to that QR code that's on your one sheet. And then they can find anything out about you that they would like to know. Sometimes I'll put my social media numbers on there. Let's see if I can find one where I did that. Hang on a sec. Got a whole bunch of these. Let's see. Yeah, none that I pulled out there, but sometimes you can find little, under the elements feature of Canva, you can find little symbols for things like Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or Twitter. So sometimes I've created a band at the bottom that indicates how many of followers that I have on those different social media places. And that kind of creates a sense of, understanding about, the hard work I've done to, get the word out about what I do and what my books are about. Some key text kinds of elements that you could put on there. And I would not suggest you do all of these, but choose carefully 3, no more than 4 of these, probably because in terms of balance, that's probably all you're going to have room for. At the top, you want to have your title and your subtitle. Don't make your name the big thing. Make the book title the big thing. So that title, that's catchy, that subtitle, that's addressing particular felt need for the audience. You're going to have that for sure up at the top. You might consider a tagline there, in terms of, and I'm going to explain a little bit about a taglines, but those are, expressions of that kind of make the pitch for your book. One that I have on this one sheet that I created, the tagline is "Listen to their stories, rewrite your own." Okay. So that's the tagline there. And so that can be kind of catchy, and put that in a piece that stands out in that box nicely. The hook for your book. And so we're thinking about back cover copy. We talked about writing hooks last month. So what is that hook for your book with that salesy piece and then the description for what the book is? Definitely got to have that on there. Any sort of unique special features of the book itself. For here on this one, for example, I have a section called content, a focus verse, a first person narrative, etc. Something called Jesus love letter, and then my thoughts, the idea of my thoughts, which is kind of a scripted response to help the reader. So if you have particular unique features that the reader would find in every single chapter, you could bullet those and list what those are and explain it just shortly, quickly about what they would be. Sometimes on these one sheets, I'll have a section called audience. If that's not really clear, particularly in your subtitle, this one I have a whole section on audience that kind of helps establish the felt need for your project. A little author bio, typically sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're longer. I just had a few little spaces here for that. And Some other optional things you might think about, if you have already gotten an endorsement from someone who has name recognition, you could put that on there. Um, Particularly if your book project is done, if you think that would help sell the project. A testimonial, perhaps from someone who actually has read your entire book and they could speak to its importance and relevance. um, Statistical kinds of information, you can pull that, in there. If you can say, 75% of women say, according to the such and such survey, 75% of women say that their prayer lives could be stronger. So that's what I mean by statistics. That if so, that actually could, helps to create the sense of need for your project. And then how you might actually market the book. What are you going to do to help bring that about? I did that on this particular one sheet. I had a whole marketing kind of strategy here. And that was because I think, discussing this particular project with editors with whom I had not worked before. Some ways to think about, in terms of the design itself, to keep it simple, to keep your word count concise, to make it visually appealing, in such a way, ooh, it just like it sparks a little smile in the eyes from someone else who would look at it. Keep it very professional oriented. Make sure that there's consistency in terms of all the things, your font, your language. Make sure it's actually spotless, error-free, pass it by someone else to look it over. It's like I more than once, I'm sure that I've had errors in a one sheet, and then, of course, all these people you're gonna meet with are very sharp editorially, so that you don't want that kind of an impression left with someone else. And make sure that there's a sense that it's audience focused. It's audience focused because we're always, we're grabbing audience by their felt needs. It's not so much about what Janet has experienced or understands, but it's more about meeting the needs of those particular people out there who would part with $16.99 plus tax and shipping. Print these out when you're going to go to a conference, or you have a one-on-one meeting with an agent or an editor, to print these out in full color. I get them done on thicker paper, so they just feel really nice. I don't think you need more than a half a dozen, and I'll just send them to officedepot.com. You might have a color printer, that's awesome if you can do really professional looking kinds of copies with that. It's worth the couple bucks. It really is. I think it's like 75 cents a page or something like that when I get it printed from Office Depot. And I could do that all on my computer, and I just have it ready for me to pick up. I pay in advance, and then I can have someone pick it up for me, or I just stop by and pick it up when I'm in the Reno area, which is about an hour away from me. So you have to plan ahead, get these things done early. I remember one conference where I didn't have the opportunity. I was going to be able to get this printed. I've been kind of working last minute on something, but I found an Office Depot like just across the street from the conference itself, and I had a rental car. So that was one of my first stops, was to go to Office Depot, pick up my copies that I had sent halfway across the country. A little hilarious. So, just wondering if y'all have questions about one sheets. I'm going to take a look at the comments over here. We have Gloria with us. Welcome, Gloria, and Liz. And rethinking my thinking, life as worship. I can't remember who you are, and I don't have my glasses on. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, Angela. Okay, welcome, Angela. So, if you have questions about one sheets or particular projects that you have in mind, yeah, I'd be open to that. Any questions at all? Okay. Liz has a question on the text. Oh, here we go. What fonts do you like for the general text? Gosh, I can't remember particularly what fonts. I know that Arial is really easy to use. I'll use a font that doesn't have little extras on it. And I typically stay away from italics because it's just a little more challenging to read. But I would say, just something as simple as Arial. This might be Garamond. It just kind of fit with the overall flyer design that I was using. I think that was probably a default font. But make it really simple. Yeah, keep it consistent from one box to another in terms of what you're putting there. Okay. Any other questions that I can help you with? Yeah. Okay. So thank you for coming today. And it's a little shorter presentation than usual, but I think I've covered what you might need to know. If it would be fun on the Book Marketing Academy Facebook page, if you've created one sheets, if you want to share some of those, again, this is like we're trusting one another not to adopt others' ideas for book projects, but because God has unlimited sort of resources and can, share with us what we are actually called to do. So here we go. Gloria asks, is a back cover copy good plus the hook and bio? Yeah, the back cover copy of any kind of a book essentially is what we're referring to when we're talking about hook. There are a couple different elements as we talked last month with a hook. You're talking about the particular need, you're expressing what the need is, then you're shifting to what the author has experienced. And then we're explaining what the book is. Those are three really important elements of the hook itself. And then usually there's some biographical information. So that very beginning part, of your back cover copy really could be what you include on your one sheet. You could just draw from that. Yeah. Good point, Gloria. Yeah, your back cover copy. Mhm. Any other questions I can help you with? Well, thank you so much for being here. And again, if you have questions, you can post those on the Facebook page, and if you tag me, I'd be happy to respond to those. So, blessings on your day, and yeah, keep writing.